Mr. Seth Schwartz, Managing Director for Capital West Advisors. He came all the way here to speak from Beverly Hills, his office, and he's a business advisor. And you tell us about it because you have multiple ways of raising capital. I know you have a slide, so go ahead.
Well, we're actually more of a business planning and financial planning company than a capital raising company. However, we do indeed provide investor identification services and have in the past provided capital introduction and advisory consulting services related to raising capital, but as we are not a broker-dealer, that is not our proficiency, basically. But we have indeed dabbled with it in the past. As of current, we are primarily an investor identification company in that regard, and as I've indicated, we are mainly a business planning and financial planning company. As for the core subject of the speech, I'll be discussing AI and how it affects business planning, what you can do with it, what you cannot do with it. And I'll start out with a little joke I developed. As in preparation for the speech, I asked AI to develop a business plan for me, a perfect business plan. It did it in 10 minutes. After about 20 more attempts, I was left with about 10% and have to redo the rest of it myself at this juncture. So, moving on. We are in a new era in the sense that AI has become a prominent software tool that can be used and it can replace and further enhance Google searches, for example. It will enable the individual to be able to search multiple things at once and organize multiple things at once. But with that being said, what I have basically evolved my understanding and opinion regarding after using AI, including ChatGPT and Cloud AI, on a very extensive basis throughout the past month and a half or so. ChatGPT has been more like about 8-9 months that I've been using it. However, in terms of regularly using ChatGPT and Cloud AI, that has been throughout the last 2 months or so. Now, I'll just give basically a baseline analogy with regards to using AI for business planning and financial planning. Now, business planning and financial planning contains many elements within it, and each element must be developed at the highest level. So it's kind of like asking an AI chef to develop a 5-star buffet of 20 5-star dishes for particular cuisine when there are 30 cuisines that are out there. This is esoteric information with regards to how specifically to develop each and every financial model for each industry. There are very specific ways that you develop the sales growth rate, revenue streams, and include maximally detailed assumptions with regards to the financial model, with regards to business planning. First off, as I've included in the deck, the first step, in essence, is to develop the strategic planning of the business. And financing strategy is kind of at the helm of the strategic planning, in the sense that financing strategy is going to affect your expansion strategy, your product line strategy, your operational growth strategy, your marketing strategy, and that's essentially the first step. Now, that's a very sophisticated process to determine how and how much capital you're going to raise. It's a balance of how much you are able to secure, maximizing your value of a company, giving up a minor amount of equity, essentially maintaining the highest value for yourself or yourselves as the owners of the company, and evaluating the risk profile of the company, the current status of the company, the specific product you have, how in demand it is, how niche it is, and basically, as an executive, your profile what you've done, what you've accomplished, what your company's accomplished, if it's an existing growth stage company, is all going to affect how much capital you can garner if it's equity financing. Now, if it's debt financing, in which SBA financing is the predominant form of garnering debt financing, it's going to be very related to the credit score of the applicant or applicants. Now, with regards to SBA lending, any owner of the company that has over 20% ownership of the company must put up their personal credit score to guarantee the loan. An overview regarding SBA financing, 85% of any loan up to $150,000 is guaranteed by the SBA, in which if the SBA, whoever garnered the SBA loan defaults, the government will back 85%, guarantee 85% of that default amount, which in essence gives the bank the ability to lower the risk profile by pretty much that ratio of 85%, I should say. That would be 1 minus 85%, so 15%. In other words, it essentially makes you able to garner somewhere in the realm of 6 times as much as you can normally garner, let's say from a credit card, as 5, 6 or so of investments guaranteed. Now, for any loan that's an SBA loan over $150,000, 75% is guaranteed. So more or less, you can multiply by 4 what you might be able to typically garner with regards to personal financing. So if you might be able to, let's say you have a 770 credit score, and your profile could enable you to garner $30,000 in a loan or a line of credit, you might be able to qualify for $120,000 or so. It's not quite that finite with regards to an equation of 4 to 1. In fact, most often you have to put down 10% of the loan amount, which already cuts out 10%. And in fact, it's less exposure than the 85% or 75%, as you've already made an additional down payment, which is the typical requirement of the specific bank or institution that has pre-qualified you for an SBA loan. Now, back to the core topic, and I'm going to delve more into alternative financing options, talk more about equity financing in terms of what you can expect of a venture capital firm wanting with regards to preferred equity and whatnot. But I'll delve back into the core subject of the contents of a business plan, the process of developing a business plan, how you can use AI, and how you cannot use AI. I basically see ourselves as in the same boat that we were 2 years ago, except for some of the tools were more advanced, enabling to the individual that's developing a business plan, which should be an expert, to conduct more sophisticated searches, at times be able to compile that information into a nice table using Claude AI or ChatGPT. And in general, the only ways that it seems that AI can and should be used the vast majority of the time is to help with capital expenditure planning, which can include specifically estimating and determining the expected capital expenditures of the facility, as well as the elaborate equipment needs of the company. Pretty much no matter how elaborate it is, and I'd say that's one of the most impressive and useful elements of ChatGPT, which I would defer to, and not Claude AI in that regard. But with regards to financial modeling, it is basically a joke, what I have seen. If you don't give it a whole bunch of inputs with regards to how you would like the financial model to be developed, it will spit out garbage, essentially. It will give you an annual summary, no monthly projections, no quarterly projections, hard input numbers, maybe a sales forecast, maybe some type of summary sheet, and maybe an income statement. It won't include balance sheet, statement of cash flows, valuation model, capital budget, sophisticated summary pro formas. It won't put assumptions on the same sheet as the sales forecast. And back to the analogy of asking an AI chef to develop, a buffet of 20 five-star dishes. Now, this is very esoteric information. This isn't put out just like a five-star chef isn't going to put their recipe on Google. All AI is capable of is what humans have programmed it to do and or what humans have requested it to do. Now, if this information is so esoteric, yes, eventually within time, I'm not saying that this isn't a feasible accomplishment within time, but with them, with developers, developers don't have access to this information normally. And you don't find this on Google either. But eventually, with time, the sharpest minds, and with various industries, if on a very industry-specific basis, it is developed accordingly. Again, remember, I'm talking about a five-star, world-class plan. I'm not, financial model. I'm not saying, can they make a McDonald's cheeseburger? I'm saying, can they render the best that is out there, which is commonly a very valuable thing to have, particularly if you're seeking equity financing. You pay a business planning company maybe $3,000 to develop your business plan. You're seeking $3 million. If it increases your value by 1%, that's $30,000. Well, let's say the value is $3 million, increases by 1%, that alone is $30,000. Now, it is so far behind at this juncture with regards to financial planning. But if you are indeed a financial planning expert and you put in many, many inputs requesting formulas for it all to be done monthly to how it should be organized, it'll still be deficient. Just today I was requesting for it to put all the sales assumptions onto the same sheet as the sales forecast, which to me is a crucial element of a financial model. How do you assess all the assumptions and look at sales when they're on two different sheets? And so that was something it could not do. It tried twice, couldn't do it, timed out. It just was not capable of doing it. And this is cloud AI, which is the the forerunner with regards to document creation for AI. And furthermore, I requested for it to develop a capital budget. It wouldn't do that. But again, if you're a layman, even just a non-business planning expert, and you don't know exactly what it should contain, which you only garner from, I'll say, many years of experience, although it's more of a function of time, instruction, effort. So one could say that a master, could, render 100 hours of brilliant wisdom into someone to educate them as to what a financial model should contain. But, back to that analogy, every industry is, or not every industry, but industries in general are different one to the next, how the sales forecast should be planned, etc. Now, where I start out the conversation with regards to step one is the strategic planning. So the financing strategy is a very top-down type of thing, where that, as I had indicated, requires a very sophisticated understanding of financial acumen, business acumen, in order to best assess, are you going to lease, or are you going to purchase, are you going to garner debt, are you going to garner equity, how are you going to maximize your value? Are you going to do it one stage, two stages? Are you going to have to give up the most? If you say 2 million as opposed to 1 million, what's the best strategy? That's a very sophisticated thing, and that is going to change everything. So So that's enough about financial planning, basically. Now, as for the business planning, what I have learned is that it is useful in regards to cloud. Let's say ChatGPT is what I would defer to normally for business planning help. I would not even start with cloud AI, as it renders very ugly looking business plans, doesn't maximize space, doesn't make the margins well, doesn't choose the right layout essentially. But most importantly, you can't just ask it to, let's say, develop a product section. It's going to include way too much information. Even if you request that it puts in bullet points, which it won't naturally do, you're going to have to pick and choose what's in there. You're going to have to truncate it accordingly. Kind of like if you put a resume into Cloud AI and you said, make this in succinct, concise format, in bullet point format. It's not going to know what to include. It's not going to know exactly how to truncate. For example, certain elements of a person's education or accomplishments or jobs should be included and others shouldn't. Even the way you format it. But regardless, whatever they do at this juncture, you're going to have to cut it and paste it into your own document. Whatever you get from ChatGPT or Cloud AI. Now, in terms of market research, competitive research, it can indeed provide an expedited search that's superior to Google, but I'll just give an example of something. I don't remember whether it was this morning or last night, but I was doing a profile of competitors, which was, for the same business model that we had just completed a business plan for. And when I asked it to do the profile of competitors, it included, if I recall, 6 players. I mean, this is a very niche industry. Okay, so it included 6 players, and this is, basically a retail type of business model. And it included 6 players, of which only 2 were competitors. The other 4 were not relevant for one reason or the other. I mean, if I recall, these were the numbers. And it did not include 3. So even though it spit out the information as I requested, which again, that's only a result of me knowing the many inputs to request from it due to wisdom, or I should say, acumen regarding business planning. But once it did indeed, render that, which is usable, it still has to be cut and pasted. It could even develop a logo. It could even include the logo of the competitors. It can't include photographs with products. You request it to, it tells you to upload your own. If you ask it to put photographs, it will give you illustrations, which is kind of ridiculous. If you have a farm company, for example, you're not going to put an animated illustration of cattle. You're going to put an actual picture of beef. But of course, that's something that can work out. That's just a gig, or that can basically be worked out. But the bottom line is that everything is tied into strategic planning. There's not just the financing strategy. There's the marketing strategy, the branding strategy, the product line strategy, expansion strategy, the operational growth strategy, which is all kind of tied into the financing strategies I mentioned. Now, upon developing the strategic planning and you move into the business plan, it's still going to be the same legwork, knowing exactly how it should be formatted, what to include within the description of the product section per industry, what should be included in the profile of competitors. In terms of the marketing plan, that's a little boilerplate. However, very importantly, based on the company's specific niche, or if they have a new product line, you're not just going to be able to defer to AI to generate an appropriate marketing strategy, at least with regards to how important particular marketing methods are. Now, it can indeed be used to help generate new ideas with regards to marketing methods that should be employed, as well as putting together a reasonable document with regards to information that, again, you're going to have to cut and paste over. Let's see what else regarding business plans. The company description, that's just all very custom, company-specific information that you're going to be using your own foundation anyway, or even if you did use an AI foundation, that's just all very custom information you get from the client, or if you were the entrepreneur developing it, it's just all very custom. You can't defer to AI for that. Growth strategy is just the same way. Basically, it's all related to the financing strategy, strategic planning. For example, you might want to launch with a core product line and add new products. It's all related to how you're raising capital, the way you're going to maintain the highest value and equity of the company, maximize the valuation of the company, be able to maximize what you're capable of garnering with regards to equity financing based upon your executive profile, company stage, and basically novelty of your product and service. And that's something that AI is just like a little bit too advanced. Basically, you can't just program AI to know what's a good new market. It's a very sophisticated type of understanding. It's essentially human thinking. So here is the one way that AI has been revolutionary with regards to document creation. Cloud AI has become a superior tool to be used for the foundation of an investor pitch deck. When you put in the specific inputs for each and every slide, essentially exactly what it should say, how it should look, how the diagram should look, then you can render something that you basically have to upload the whole thing into PowerPoint, and then you can transfer it into various investor pitch deck softwares. I tried to import it directly into Canva, and it just completely was dysfunctional. Then I imported it into PowerPoint, and then transferred it over to Canva, and that indeed did work. And that is now the go-to with regards to investor pitch deck foundation. But it still takes a very comparable amount of time using Canva. You might spend 3 hours developing the specific slides by putting in lots of inputs, and then it'll shoot it out. And you're going to have to change every color. Basically, you're going to have to respace it. You're going to have to further develop it, obviously, and you're going to redevelop diagrams, the size of diagrams, what it includes, remove information, and you might spend 3 hours developing the foundation for the pitch deck, but then 17 hours or so using Canva to complete it. And we're just talking the narrative here. With regards to financial planning, it still goes back to what I have indicated, that is nowhere even close to being able to do anything with regards to financial planning. I mean, it literally spits out, I can't even call it an F minus. I call it maybe a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. What it puts out if you do not put in a whole bunch of specific inputs. Now, if you are indeed a business planning expert and you have experience specifically with AI, one, knowing how to communicate with it, and two, basically, developing a process of making sure you include each and every input. As I've indicated, it still doesn't even come close to matching what you could consider a 5-star financial model. Even if it develops it in a way that's not, the extremely deficient model that it naturally puts out by requesting that it includes all of these inputs, it's still not going to put out anything close. It doesn't do annual summary pro forma financial tables, besides a very detailed, besides one summary for everything. It seemingly can't even do a capital budget. as I mentioned, it can't even put the assumptions of a sales forecast onto the same table. But yes, that will indeed evolve. To be proficient on an industry-wide basis, that is a long way away. But to be proficient, let's say, for a restaurant, for a very simple business model, that can indeed happen with time. But again, it's going to have to be basically a business planning expert and someone that has a high C-level type of business acumen. Now, the novelty of the product line is another very important thing, because that's not going to match ever what AI might put as a pre-built type of mechanism. But let's see where to go. Maybe I'll jump back into the process and methodology of business planning, but I'll just move on to venture capital financing and alternative forms of financing. Now, VC firms, of course, exchange capital for equity ownership within a company, and the most common mechanism of performing this transaction is is using preferred voting stock, which typically has a liquidation preference upon sale, offering the investor one-time downside protection, in which if the company has sold for a lower amount than the venture capital investor acquired ownership at, they are paid back fully. Every dollar goes to paying them back until the sale amount is distributed amongst the owners. And that's something that you can get with preferred equity, and that's a common thing done in the venture capital world. And there's another thing which is also very important, which are distribution preferences, in which there's a particular return on investment, call it a particular amount of income, that the venture capitalists demand to garner. And let's say that there's no income. Let's say that they demand $100,000 a year in this return on income, which are the distribution preferences, and the company puts out no money for 2 years. Well, in year 3, the first $200,000 is all going to go to pay back this specified return on investment before any distributions can be made. So it's not just a conventional, common stock transaction typically. It's more in the favor of the venture capitalists, essentially, limiting their downside risk and pretty much guaranteeing a particular, not guaranteeing, but pretty much providing a strong stance to garner distribution at a higher, with a lower risk than the common stock holders. Now, other types of financing besides SBA lending and equity financing, which I've already covered, includes commercial lending, which are basically institutions that are not backed by the Small Business Administration. Private commercial lending, which are non-institutional based commercial lending, and accounts receivable financing, which is basically for a growing company or a company that has substantial revenues, enabling them to get an advance basically on revenue that will be incurred or has just been incurred. Inventory financing, for example, an oil company can get inventory financing on the purchase of oil and then immediately sell it, or gas or diesel, and get very short-term financing. And upon the sale, the inventory financing gets paid back. Grant financing, which seems like we should all know what that means, but one thing to be said is there are particular, it's not just widely available on a federal grant basis. Normally one, you commonly need to be a nonprofit. There are very specific companies that provide economy-stimulating initiatives, or they help with health of the country, or they provide scientific innovations. They don't need to be nonprofits commonly, but otherwise, a lot of it are nonprofits, and it is very specific. It has to fall within some specific categories. USA rural development business loans are loans that are administered with a good interest rate, long duration, better than what you can expect from typical commercial lending. That when they're in an area that as they call it, rural development, in an area that basically the state, or I don't know if this is state-based, but it probably is. So I'm speculating the state would designate particular areas that they want to further develop that qualify for that category, enabling businesses that operate in that area, upon having good credit, et cetera, to get particularly favorable loans. And of course, asset financing can be a major constituent of the amount that can be garnered as it collateralizes the loan. State-based economic development, revolving loan funds, are basically for companies that will stimulate the economy on a particular level more than an average company could qualify for such loans, which, from what I recall, they also are administered at very reasonable rates with good duration, etc. So, let me think if I have left anything out.
Just allow questions and answers.
Yeah,
If
you ask
anybody
any
wants
questions
anything, because I know it's foreign, because it's a foreign language. I know you are good at what you do. You are a startup, you are techno. If anything about technology, I don't know. I only know how to raise capital. And I speak the language he doesn't. I understand all this. But if you hear it for the first time, or it's not something that you always hear, this is a foreign language too. But that's to say, you have to hire somebody like us who does the consulting for raising capital, because we speak the language of the investment bankers, VCs, angels, which they carry the money. That's the capital access. Go ahead and okay.
Testing.
You gotta give me a few seconds.
A quick question for you. You seem to be averse to AI and other language sometimes. Is it because of the compliance that they screw up on, or what's the reason?
Well,
because I know money is a very serious topic, especially when you deal with AI. So.
yeah, for one, it's pretty much from every regard at this juncture. I understand that it's within its infancy of development. It's going to be further developed. It has clunks that will naturally be resolved. But if you ask it to develop a business plan, you don't put every single input that you want. It's going to spit out garbage. It's going to look bad. It's not going to include the type of information. You see, AI only does what you tell it to, or what programmers have told it to do. So one, it's in the infancy of programmers developing it. But two, you have to tell it what to do with regards to business plan. It just won't naturally describe products in the way you want them to, include the relevant information, for competitors. And then there's certain elements that just will never be able to be done, like the growth strategy, financing strategy, product line strategy, company description, the management biographies, be able to take a resume, put together bios. And with regards to financial planning is even more sophisticated by far than a business plan. And in fact, back to the analogy of expecting, an AI chef to be able to develop, 50 or 25-star dishes, that information isn't readily available, just like a chef doesn't, put out the recipe. But, what was I saying? But,
Okay, next question. Carolyn.
Hi. You said the financial model, or the financial AI, doesn't give a good, it doesn't give a good model, or you can't put that out. As I begin my work on a business plan, AI has given me a format for that and does a pretty good job. But on the financial part of it, I don't know where to go to get the best, or a structure for that. So where do I go for a good structure for the business plan and a good structure for the financial plan?
well, maybe if you were to do a very thorough search and not just pull up the first results from Google, maybe use Harvard Business School and examine, what is contained in the specific industry that you're referring to, then you might or might not, if you truly examine it, be able to determine many, many inputs. I'm talking about 50 inputs you put like an essay
So
into
what
it.
steps do I take to do my research?
Well, you essentially have to become an expert of what a financial model contains. And the best way for it to be developed, because what's put out now is just complete garbage. I mean, it is really,
So the only
it's
resource
really
is-
odd invoking it.
So I have to go to a financial manager to do that. Is that right? I need you to go to an expert to put a financial plan together. Is that right?
Well, the second part of what I was saying is at the current juncture, they obviously haven't, evolved enough to choose the best layout and format for financial planning. I'm saying really the best, because doing one thing can make the whole thing go from a 5-star to a 3-star. Like, if you hard input number, again, if you don't give it specific inputs, it's going to give you hard input numbers, annual projections, not even monthly, not quarterly, not even give you a cash flow. I'm going to give you an example of something, and you guys, might laugh at this one. As a test, until this morning, I guess, I did multiple renderings of requesting for it to do a barbecue restaurant in Los Angeles, okay? After many, many attempts, because I wanted to push, the limits, so that I completely understood what I was talking about, maximize my understanding of the capabilities of AI before I gave the speech. And, even when I got it to do something which I'd still call 2-star, but that was after, lots and lots of inputs that way transcended what would be done without inputs. It rendered a model for a barbecue restaurant, which it was something like 450,000 was equity and 500,000 was debt. It projected that it lost money all 5 years, had a net loss in all 5 years, and ended up with a cash balance of, it was negative 2.6 million, if I recall. So it didn't even balance the cash. And it's kind of hard to explain, but it's kind of like everything is interconnected. Back to that analogy, not only is it requesting the chef to develop these 20 cuisines and this information is esoteric, but also the budget might change for this whole buffet. And you're going to ascertain that as you're developing the model, and you're looking at the cash, you're looking at the amount of capital, you're using standard pricing, profit margins, and you're just kind of seeing how fast it's going to be growing. That's going to affect your growth strategy. You don't just spit it out. And if you do, it might have to be changed. And if that happens, what do you have to do? You have to redesign the whole thing.
again, I know that it's just so far, it's not even close at this juncture with regards to financial planning. Of course, it's going to be further developed and improved within time, but it'll never completely replace a financial planning expert, except maybe maybe in 8 years from now or so, maybe 5 years even, an entrepreneur is adept enough to put all of the proper inputs in and specifically request how it should be developed, and it's a very generic industry. Then, in that case, if you want to forego an expert's insight, which can be invaluable, if they tell you, oh, you should include this product, it fits perfectly within your business model because they have that type of acumen. Well, let's just say it's a generic model. The individual has a high-level business acumen. They've thoroughly contemplated the product line strategy. They're confident in what they've thought of. They're very good at financing strategy, at deciding whether things should be leased or purchased, used or new. Raise more money or less money in the beginning. Evaluate your profile, like what you're capable of, what the VC or bank will be wanting to do. Explore the various options even to maximize a bank loan, even if it's an SBA loan. If you can do all that, then eventually, if it's a very generic, very simple model, and the business owner is confident that they've thoroughly developed the product line strategy to the maximum, and they have a good understanding regarding how much financing they should see, then eventually, for a very generic, simple model, it should become proficient. I would expect only with putting in the many inputs. I mean, if at this juncture it spits out complete garbage, if you don't request about 50 inputs, then maybe they'll just naturally improve it, but it's still only going to be for a very generic, very simple model. It's always invaluable pretty much if it's not a very generic and simple model to use an expert, because they get to say one thing that changes the whole scope with regards to adding a product, expanding your product line strategy later, staging out the financing, particular marketing initiatives that should be employed based on the specific niche product, etc. Yes?
Yeah, I'm curious, how mature or how well trained is your AI model? How long have you used it?
Cloud AI Opus 4.6, it's Sonnet 4.6, and ChatGPT 5.0.
Right. Because from my own experience, find out that if you train your AI, it go and digest all these business plan financials models and look at all these calculations, read up on the news, all the new latest, and then the more you ask it, the more intelligent it gets. So I'm curious, so how long have you used that particular instance?
Well, as I've indicated, even when I did put in all the proper inputs, which you're basically indicating that if you communicate the thorough way with the AI, then you can set it up in which it will follow these instructions. But even when you do all that, it makes no sense. It's just okay. It makes no sense with regards to managing cash flow. It can't even make the capital budget. You can't even put the sales assumptions on the sales forecast. You can't make summary pro forma tables. But yeah, assuming all that can be done, still, unless it's a super generic model and it's run by a C-level executive or someone with a lot of business acumen that's confident enough to develop their own financing strategy, brand new strategy, etc., where they don't feel that they're potentially, losing value by not collaborating, with a professional. Even if someone that's their colleague could be valuable, even me collaborating with another person regarding any business model can be valuable. But if they're that confident and it's that simple, that generic, then yeah. But otherwise, it's all related to that very sophisticated
determination of how and how much financing should be procured, which completely affects the staging, the growth staging of the company, the product line expansion, the marketing. For example, a company could be a B2B wholesale business, but they decide to raise a minimum amount because they know it's an unproven product. And they know they're going to have to give up so much because it's a startup company. So they're going to want to minimize how much they give up. So they might start as, just, do some B2C type stuff, but focus just on B2B sales, which is an intensive marketing dollars. And then later upon demonstrating, or integrated commerce retailer, it just depends on the model, but upon demonstrating traction, then, raise the bigger amount. And this type of stuff, you can't, I was talking about the generic models. Maybe 70% of companies looking for equity financing have a unique product. Hence the whole, what's the problem, what's the solution? It's hard to even, it's like if I have to talk like an AI developer here, it's like, there's just too many factors that, requires human thinking. But yeah, I understand that, there's just thousands, tens of thousands of, high-level AI developers working at 50 hours a week. And, they're collaborating, they're using, mechanisms that, essentially improve the mechanism of the AI, but it'll never be able to decide the financing strategy. It's a very specific, novel product. It's like what's popular, like it could be related to like a new, thing in culture, like music or film. It's just, I'm just saying on a broad scale basis where you'll be able to always use it. Of course, if you put in the right inputs, and again, which you need to be a business planning expert to do essentially, then eventually if you put in all the right inputs, it can maybe be more than just the most generic, but again, it's a very niche or new, novel product and immature industry. I can't really foresee it having that type of insight ever, basically.
Okay, a couple more. Caroline.
Do you have any concerns about the security of the financial data that you're putting into the AI model? Because, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, like AI gets its information from the public domain. And if you put in like sensitive financials that you want to keep private with your company, is that now in the public domain?
It's a very interesting question. I can't say that I've explored these cybersecurity risks of using AI ever. Actually, this is the first time. But that does seem indeed potentially feasible if it was hacked, I'd have to say, or if it was an internal type of hacking, done by like developers that work for Claude or work for ChatGPT, and then they take your information, like you're inputting a business plan, a novel strategy that has just raised 50 million, and now they're trying to raise 100 million. They'd be like, oh wow, I'm going to tap into this venture capital firm and take what we can. So it does indeed seem like a veritable risk. That's about all I can say.
I would not recommend putting any financial information on AI. I would not. We got one more question, and if you have more questions, you're gonna stick around, right?
Sure.
Yeah, he's gonna sponsor our dessert, coffee, and he's gonna go get it. So we just want to have one more question, and you'll come back.
So you spent a lot of time with AI. You did a lot of inputs. Is there any benefit that you got out of it? Will it shorten your time of working in the future, or was it all wasted time?
No, that is a great question. It is particularly valuable in these areas. As I had mentioned, investor pitch deck, creation of a foundation. It's the state of the art at this juncture, using cloud to develop the foundation for investor pitch deck. It'll develop a beautiful foundation, which again needs to be, adjusted. The colors have to be, perfected. The fonts have to be perfected with regards to size, etc. Needs to be further developed.
Would it save you time, or do you already have decks that would save you more time by just reusing the decks that you have already?
Well, we're not that far along into reusing, slides, but we already have that type of data from prior pitch decks, which can be imported into Canva basically after AI has developed a foundation. But again, the foundation is only even close to useful, where then you can further develop it for 15 hours if you put in a very specific level of inputs.
I was really going towards.
Okay,
Would it save you time using it, or would it not?
It is phenomenal with regards to capital expenditure planning. If you ask it, give me a list of all the equipment that would be needed for, chicken, egg, livestock, or let's say chicken, egg, cattle, mutton, and goat meat and fruit and vegetable farm. And you say what size it's going to be exactly, which again goes to the whole financing strategy, deciding the size of what it'll be, and that completely affects everything. But if you're at that juncture and you know exactly what size it should be based upon your financing strategy, et cetera, and then how you should expand, then it's phenomenal with regards to, and that's ChatGPT in particular, with regards to planning out your expenditures on equipment, facility, furniture and fixtures within a facility, leasehold improvements. So it's phenomenal with capital expenditures, and as I've indicated, it's phenomenal with the design of investor pitch decks. And it's great for asking what are some unique marketing initiatives that I can employ, and you can even tell the specific type of business model. It's phenomenal with regards to image creation, still with lots and lots of kinks. But for example, we're now into logo creation, where this is something that we could do a logo pretty quickly, with many renderings basically on average. But it's still clunky. I specifically had the job, and by the way, there's six or so of us in the company. I did the job of developing 6 coins for cryptocurrency coins, and I was just essentially developing the logos. And it literally took on average about 80 renderings. You could say make it 10% smaller, and it makes it half the size. It just very dysfunctional. Yes, image creation might be one of the first things that come close to perfect. Maybe we're only a year or two away for it being as proficient as a high-level designer. Image creation is where it's most advanced at this juncture, I'd say. It's phenomenal with regards to developing a beautiful business plan cover, a logo, logos for the cryptocurrency coins. As I had mentioned, cloud can develop tables. Let's say you say, if you're trying to organize a lot of market research or put all the competitors into an overview and ask for specific things, you can develop, a very beautiful table, for you, which you can then cut and paste into your document. This is a very complex, new type of thing, and that's why it took me a while to prepare. I mean, it is something that I should be spending a lot of time thinking about, figuring it out. What are the actual capabilities? If you push it to the limit, so I'm glad that it was coinciding with his speech, because the faster I caught up, completely, the better. But it's almost hard to talk about the future and how it's programmed and how it operates. It's just a very high level, conversation. So, when I'm talking, it's, maybe
maybe 85% accurate or so, but you know, I'm humble enough, and you know, let's say my knowledge still has to evolve, you know, regarding it. That you know, I know that you know what I'm saying is it's like a Harvard professor, you know, describing it exactly.
Okay, thank you. Please don't come out with the coffee and the dessert. So please don't stick around. Can you take some pictures? Thank you so much, Seth.
Yep.
And like capital raising questions, it's not gonna be just a few hours. It's gonna be endless, right? Long time. Because I did 37 years in the banking and this capital raising. I seen decks. I seen business plan after business plan. I'm telling you, about 90% of us, startups and small business,